Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this Facebook Live about helping our kids deal with anxiety. I know that this is a really sensitive topic and it can be kind of a painful one for us to talk about, so I was kind of nervous about doing this. I started doing this Facebook Live series because I felt like this is a time where we need some connection and to talk about some things, and I asked for some discussion questions, and one of them was about helping our kids deal with anxiety. And so I've thought about this and I've prayed about it, and I hope that I can say some things that will be helpful, but I also know that I don't know everything. I don't know everyone's circumstances or the individual things you're going through, and so I apologize if I say anything that hurts anyone. I hope that I don't, but just know that that's not my intent. I really hope to share some things that will be helpful, and whatever is helpful to you can take, and whatever isn't, just leave. So as we're waiting for people to get here, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Karen Bates. I'm the creator of warrioreducation.com and the author of the book Find Your Path, Learning Your... I'm nervous, I can't remember the name of my book. Learn your... how to find your unique gifts and talents. That's not what it's called, but anyway, Find Your Path. And then I also, I'm the mother of 8 kids, and I have a degree in marriage and family human development, and I'm doing this life to help with some of the experiences I've had, as well with some of my kids who have struggled with anxiety or different things, and so I hope it's helpful. I do want to start with saying that my kids are home, and so some of them might come in at some point. I try to tell them to keep themselves entertained for a little bit, but if that happens, I apologize, and hopefully it all turns out okay, that I don't have to leave for a minute or something. Again, this is a hard topic, and so bear with me, and if you have things to share or experiences that have helped you, please go ahead and share them. I may not look at all the comments right as they're coming so that I don't get distracted, but I'll go through during the live and look at what you're saying or the questions you're asking, so don't be afraid or hesitate to do that. When I was thinking about this, I went ahead and asked my kids, what were some of their thoughts about anxiety, and what helps them deal with anxiety, and what helps them for us to do as parents in helping them deal with it. And they had some really insightful things to say. I asked my daughter, who is on a mission, some of her thoughts. She struggled with anxiety since she was really little. I remember that, even at the age of 6, she could barely talk to people outside our family. It was really difficult for her to, she was very, very timid, and she was very sensitive. So I remember I had to cut off the tags from her clothes because they bothered her, and she hated loud sounds and lights, and so she just had one of those very sensitive personalities, and very she wanted to do things just right, and so that caused her anxiety too when she wasn't able to do things the way she thought they ought to be done. And she struggled with this for a while, and then when she was 14, her anxiety led to an eating disorder, which I didn't even realize that's what was happening at the time, but I just thought maybe she was kind of picky or something. And I can share this because she shared it on her blog. She's made a blog about it, and she's helped a lot of people as she's overcome it and learned so much from it. But at the time, she was 14, and we were on a walk, and she said, Mom, I think I have a problem with food. And I was like, oh, really? What do you mean? And she said, I just think about it too much. And she kind of explained to me how it started with counting calories because she wanted to eat just the right amount of food, for her day. And it kind of snowballed from there, and that it was becoming a problem, and she felt trapped, and she didn't know how to get out of it. And so that led to, a lot of learning opportunities for her. And one of the things we would do is we would go on walks almost every day, and she would talk. And so one of the things she said that was really important to her and to people who are dealing with anxiety is to be able to share and to talk and to have someone that will listen and not try to fix what they're going through. She said, it's not your path as a parent to walk. And I know from personal experience that it's really difficult to not try to fix their problems because we love them, we want them to feel better, and we think we have so much experience, more experience than they have, and we want to take them on because we think we could handle them better. And maybe we're not consciously thinking that, but it's kind of what we're doing when we're trying to fix their problems. And she said, a lot of times you just need to talk. You need a safe place to go to where you're not going to be judged, and where you're going to feel free to say, this is what's bothering me. And as you talk, a lot of times you come to your own conclusions and your own understanding a lot better than if someone's kind of telling you, this is what's real and this is what's true. When you kind of come to those conclusions yourself through your talking, it can be really, really helpful. So that was her first piece of advice, is to make a safe relationship where someone can share and not try to fix it. But on the other hand, there is a little bit of that accountability that you need when you're struggling through something like that. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment as well, and some of the things her thoughts about that. But I'm gonna go through my notes here. I think I mentioned this, but if you have any thoughts about anything you've done that's been helpful to your children, please go ahead and share them. I'll try to remember to pause and look at those. Okay, so going along with that, listening without judgment, I think it's really also very important that we understand that anxiety or fear are not bad emotions. And this is really important because I think in our culture, we tend to equate anxiety, like we say, fear is the opposite of faith. And so we think, well, if I have anxiety or fear, that must mean I'm not being faithful enough, or I'm not doing things well enough. And that's not true. Fear is not bad, and neither is anxiety. They're just emotions like any other emotion. They're not inherently good or bad. They just give us clues as to what we can start doing, or our next step in learning what we need to do. And so in my book, I talk about one of the challenges I mentioned in here is facing your fears. And the way I say it is, let me find it. Fear is often thought of as the opposite of faith, but it's not. Fear is faith's training partner. Fear can serve to propel you towards seeking protection, and then faith lets you find that protection in a higher power. As you begin to understand and trust God's love, you grow in courage and you move forward, even though you're scared, until that fear is no longer present. And then you can move on to the next challenge. And so this diagram kind of helps me. And I learned this when I was doing some ropes course facilitator training, but it was really helpful. I'm going to tie it into this. But this circle kind of represents our current abilities and our current capacity to cope with things or to thrive. And this is where we're at. And when we're here, we feel comfortable. We're happy there. But when we find ourselves out here for whatever reason, maybe circumstances, or maybe we choose to put ourselves out here, whatever it is, we're no longer comfortable. We're outside of our comfort zone, but we're also in the zone of growth, because we don't grow here, we grow here. And so anytime we're outside our comfort zone, or our zone of what we're currently capable of, then we experience fear. That's the thing that makes it uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's a very mild way to put it, but it's scary. It's scary to be out there. And so we need to realize that fear is a good thing, because it means we're growing, and it means that we can start to expand the circle and make it so that it's a bigger circle. Our capacity and our ability grows, and then we are again comfortable here, until the next challenge comes, and we feel, and we grow and move on from there. And so it's really important that we understand that good people with good intent that have their hearts in the right place still experience fear. We see that over and over in the scriptures, that they fear until they understand what's going on. And when we're out here, outside of that circle, we don't see things clearly, because when we're in fear, we have tunnel vision, right? It's one of those mechanisms that helps us survive. So if I'm in a dangerous situation, the first thought I need to have is how to escape. And so when we're in that area, we're not seeing the big picture. A lot of times we're just trying to get out of it. And so if we accept it and say, oh, this is a good place to be, now how do I grow so that I don't feel uncomfortable here, so that I'm no longer anxious and scared, instead of trying to escape it? Because those are the two options we have here, right? When we're here, I'm going to make another little star. Let's say we're out here now. We're in our growth zone, or in the zone that we're a little anxious in. We have two options. We can either numb our feelings so that we no longer experience those things, and a lot of times that's what leads to some addictive behaviors and things, because we're trying to numb them away. Or we can expand the circle. We can and expand our ability and our capacity to thrive there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to expand that and share some of the thoughts that my kids had as I go through that as well. So mentioned when my daughter was struggling with this, she felt anxious when she would eat. And so this was one thing that she had to understand, was that anxiety wasn't bad. It meant she was doing something hard and she was growing. And that we didn't, she was numbing her way to those anxiety feelings by not eating. Sometimes we numb, like my tendency is to numb them by eating. You know, I go to the sugar or the chocolate. So we have different ways to numb those feelings, and we have to learn healthy ways to cope with them instead of coping with them immediately in an easier way. And so there's 3 areas really that kind of help us be able to cope with these things or to move forward in them. The first, or I guess 3 areas that help us expand the circle is, I guess, a better way to put it, that help expand our capacity and ability. So the first one is our thoughts. And like I said, when we have tunnel vision, we don't see things clearly, and we need to realize 2 things. One of them is that the faulty thought we often have is that and that causes us anxiety, and maybe different things, but I think this is a very common one, is that we are not enough in some way. So we're not smart enough, or we're not diligent enough, or we're not friendly enough, or a good enough mother, or a good enough friend. And so we just have all these feelings about how we're not enough, and we believe them, and they seem real to us because our experience or the way we're seeing things then. And so our thoughts can really put us in that zone of fear or keep us there because we don't see things as they are. So one really important thing to remember is that all of those traits that we desire, that we think we want more of, they're already in us. They're inherent in us by our divine nature. So they're there, and our job is to just nurture them and help them grow. It's like we're all just babies. We're all just children learning to live up a potential that is infinite. And so all of those character traits that we think, oh, I'm not this, we really are. We just need to nurture them and help them grow, which leads me to the second point, and that is that it's okay to not be good at everything, because we're meant to help one another in different ways with our unique talents and gifts. And that's part of the reason we're here on earth, is to learn to help each other, that we all have different callings here, and that we have different gifts, and that just because I'm not as friendly as so-and-so or as social as her doesn't mean that I don't have other gifts that can also use. And it doesn't mean I won't become that way. If I want to really work on that, I can pray for that gift and try to develop it if I feel like it's something important. But I can also realize that I do have gifts, and maybe I haven't discovered what they are yet. You know, a lot of us don't discover our gifts until adulthood, and that's okay. And we'll keep discovering them through life. But once we start to understand what they are, we'll be so grateful that we have the gifts we have, and not somebody else's gifts, because we see how much joy they bring to our lives and what a blessing they are to others as we start to develop them and use them. And so comparison is very, very deadly, because we are not seeing things straight, and we're not seeing things as they are. We're not seeing ourselves for who we really are. And so one really good example of this that I loved as I was reading my scriptures the other day was in Genesis, I believe, and Moses was talking to God, and God is saying, I need you to go free my people. And Moses gives them all these reasons, and God is patient with them and tells them the things that he can do that will help him overcome those reasons that he can't. And then Moses says, well, I have this problem with my speech, and you can heal. You've healed a lot of other people. Why don't you just take this away? I'm totally paraphrasing. And this is when God's anger is kindled. It doesn't ever mention him getting his anger being kindled before, but all of a sudden it says, and God's anger was kindled against Moses. And I thought, well, why was his anger suddenly kindled over that question? And the thought that came to me was, it was because he was then asking, he wasn't okay with who he was anymore. And what God says to Moses is, didn't I give you Aaron? Aaron can be your spokesperson. And I just think that's a really important point for all of us to remember. We have gifts, and we have different callings and things that we can do with those gifts. And we are meant to help one another build the kingdom of God. That's why we have different gifts. So if we can get out of that comparison, it'll help us a lot with our anxiety and help us be more happy with where we're at and the fact that we have all the things that we need to accomplish our work. So helping our kids understand that, I think, is really important. And we do that a lot of times, well, again, with my daughter's advice, is by listening, because let's see, we can confront them with the truth, right? We can try to say, like, you're wrong because of this and this and this, and they won't listen to us, or they'll think we don't understand. But we can teach them indirectly through stories of other people who thought they weren't very good at something, and then they learned their gifts, and through scriptures where you learn over and over again your worth and what you mean to our Heavenly Father. But then also through listening, so helping them discover those thoughts for themselves and asking them questions, why do you feel that way? Do you think that's true? And helping them kind of come to their own conclusions. So those are both very important ways that we can help our thoughts in these situations. And then also sometimes counseling, like for my daughter, when we went on walks and she would pray and she'd get answers to her prayers, and she was feeling like she was progressing a lot, but she got to this point where she didn't feel like she could quite overcome certain mental barriers, certain foods that she just couldn't bring herself to eat. And I had mentioned to her, like, maybe a counselor would be helpful a few times, but she just didn't think that was really necessary until she finally said, you know what, maybe it wouldn't hurt to try. So she went and she saw a counselor, which was a really nice thing for both of us, because she had another source of support, right? And that could help her work through some of these thoughts and things. And it was very helpful. And she saw her for a couple of months, and then she was able to overcome those things, and then she was done. And she learned to be humble, but also learned a lot of great things in the process. And she's been able to help a lot of people who have gone through different experiences, which is another thing that our kids really need to understand, is that a lot of times these trials that feel like really heavy and burdensome to them are going to be things that are going to give them compassion and ability to help others in the future. Our gifts are often paired with a weakness or something that we need to overcome to fully unlock them and to help them be what they need to and are meant to be. And so again, they're not bad. These emotions are not bad. They're helping us become who we need to become. So before I move on to the next one, I'm going to look at these comments and see if anybody has said anything. Let's see. Whenever my son opens up to me, I tend to want to fix it for him and tell him how to fix it. I need to keep quiet and let him talk. Yeah, I do that too. And it's a tricky thing. When I asked my other daughter about some of her things that she needed for when she was having anxiety, she said, well, I need space. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing for you to say first thing. And I kind of was a little bit offended. But she said, a lot of times I come to you because I want to talk and sort out my feelings. But it's not because I want you to fix it or try to tell me what to do. And so that was another reminder of oh yeah, that's really important. And so, but it's really hard to do. And then, okay, the second area, and this is kind of a sensitive one, but I don't think it should be, is that affects our ability to cope or our gifts, or contributes to our anxiety, is our physical health, our physical well-being. And so, a lot of times I have noticed I've had a couple kids that have struggled with panic attacks at night, and it makes for some sleepless nights, and they are breathing hard, their heart's beating super fast, and they've struggled with it. And I've noticed a pattern when these things have happened, that it's at times when we're not keeping our sleep schedule. Maybe we're having a family reunion, or it's a holiday, and we're eating a lot of junk food or sugar. And it really does affect how emotionally, how they feel. And I've seen this in my own life as well. When I'm eating junk, I just feel a little bit more down, and I feel better when I eat well. And exercise is really, really healing for our hormones. Our hormones directly affect our feelings. And so if they're out of whack, then it's harder to feel good. And we can make our hormones work better when we take better care of our bodies. And so a lot of times people get offended. They're like, yeah, fresh air and sunshine isn't going to fix every problem, which is true, but it does a huge contributing factor to our well-being. And again, these are 3 areas that all contribute. And so it's not fair to throw one out because it didn't fix it. I tried that for a while and it didn't work. These are longer term solutions, right? And sometimes a solution, people sometimes will look down on prescription drugs or something, say, well, that's just an easy fix for a problem. for some people it's a really hard fix because we don't want to get onto those to medicine or whatever. But a lot of times, maybe that is a short-term solution to help us get out of the fog so we can see clearly, so we can think clearly and know our next step in what we need to do to fix our bodies, our thoughts, our spirits. So it's not good to judge. We don't really know what other people around us need. And sometimes maybe that is a necessary step in the right direction for them. I don't think it's a long-term solution for most people. It might be for some, but I think that it can be a really effective short-term solution to help us be able to think clearly and understand and see our next step. So that taking care of our bodies is really, really important. And understanding how our hormones affect those feelings. Sometimes it's really hard to feel the spirit or feel the peace where our hormones aren't letting us, right? The spirit may still be there. We may still be doing the right things, but our bodies aren't letting us feel it because they're out of whack. And so trying to take good care of them will be helpful, and then having faith that eventually our bodies will be healed and we'll be able to feel those things again. It's not permanent. It's just something that we need to sort through and work through until we're able to feel normal again. So does anyone else have any thoughts about how our body affects our feelings or how our thoughts affect our feelings? I'm trying to ask questions because I said this is a discussion. I think that you guys have some really important things to say as well. But sometimes this is on delay, so I may not see your questions right away, and so that makes it kind of tricky to have a discussion. But I'll come back to it if you say something. I'll come back if it pops up later. Okay, let's see. There's a question. I've thought about having my son talk to a counselor. How did you find someone who doesn't just want to put them on medication? I'm not sure where to start for good resources for a child counselor. Yeah, that's really tricky. And that was my fear as well, because for me, medication is like a very, very last resort after you've tried other things and they don't seem to be working, and you need something to help you get through the day, right? I asked around. I actually called Algiers Family Services and asked who they would recommend, and they gave me the number of somebody that they said, this person's really good at dealing with this particular problem. And so that's kind of how I did it. I was just blessed, I guess. Kind of be prayerful in your guidance. I happened to talk to the right person who led me to a really good person for her, because it is tricky sometimes if you get the wrong person to talk to your child, and then their personalities don't mesh. That could be a difficult thing. So it is a hard decision to make, to go into counseling and to trust that counselor enough with your child. So yeah, I wouldn't just go into it with like anyone will do. I do think you have to do your research and try to find, but that's how I did it. I asked those people who I knew were in that field, and then found someone for her. So then the last thing, and again, keep posting questions or thoughts. And if you know anyone who has been successful in getting out of it too, that could be a helpful place to go for, who did you talk to a counselor and who did you go see? And sometimes that can lead you. And just, I think if we have a prayer in our heart and we're praying constantly, that we'll be led to the right people, if that's what we need. And then the third area, again, so we talked about how our thoughts affect our mood and our bodies affect our moods. The third area is our spirits. And again, this is another thing that tends to get discounted sometimes, and I think it's sad when I hear like, yes, reading your scriptures and going to the temple isn't going to fix everything. But the truth is that reading our scriptures and praying and feeding our spirits is a longer term solution than anything else. Like, it's going to help us have our thoughts in the right places. It's going to help us have the motivation to treat our bodies right. Like, it's really something that's not going to fix the problem overnight, but it's a diligent effort that we got to keep doing day in and day out, that slowly, line upon line, will take us baby step to what we personally need in order to heal. God is a God of healing. I know that to be true. And so giving up on it and saying like, oh, that stuff doesn't work, I tried it, is really, really just not a good thing to do, because it is the long-term solution to to what we need. And so just because it doesn't work right away, or it doesn't seem to fix everything right away, it doesn't mean that if we don't keep at it, that it'll help us know what we need to do. And it's going to be different for everyone, right? Like my personal next step is going to be different than yours or my daughter's. But as we are seeking him constantly and seeking that guidance, little by little, we'll be led step by step to what we need. And so it's really important that we don't discount that we don't take that lightly, or to say it doesn't work, or to put it down ever, because it is the greatest and longest term solution to the things that we're going through. And so I highly suggest that you make that a very important and part of your healing and of your day. And then with that, as we're working on these long-term solutions, right, our physical health, our spiritual health, and our thoughts, that we come up with coping strategies to get through the now, right? And so that's the next thing that I think is really important, is when we're taking those baby steps in those areas, sometimes we come to a moment where we're like, right now, I feel like I need something to help me cope with this moment. And so a lot of times that's when we have those addictive behaviors, or we go to the unhealthy things. And if we can come up with and practice even the little things, going to solutions that are healthy instead of unhealthy. And so one silly example is these Facebook Lives for me. I get really nervous. Obviously, you can tell. I get really nervous about doing these. And so the day of, I tend to be like a snacky. I'll snack on things a lot. I'll go to my chocolate chips. And so I'm learning that when I have those temptations to go to sugar or to go to things to bring me comfort, to say a prayer instead, and to try to practice that, going to God for comfort a lot more often than to sugar, right? And sometimes I'll still turn to the chocolate chips just because they're easy and they're fast and I'm not thinking, as clearly. But the more I practice that, when the big problems come and the big issues come, then that'll be more of an easy thing to go to. That will be something that's more a part of who I am. And so to practice that even in the little things is crucial. And that's a silly example, but one that's heavier is, I remember when I tend to have some bouts of, I don't have it like for extended periods of time, but I will, after I have my babies, go through some postpartum expression, and in bouts, like I'll have some hard days, and then it's okay, and then it comes back. But I remember during those times, I had to learn, after a few babies, I finally figured this out, I had to learn to divert my thoughts. If I let them rest on, man, I do so many things wrong. And this child, poor child, he's got such a bad mother, and I'm so inconsistent with this, and oh, look how messy my house is, and I can't keep up, and all these negative thoughts that you tend to get when you're in this dark place. When I let those, when I just let my mind sit, that's where they would go. And so I had to consciously divert it to something that was uplifting. And so sometimes that was music. I picked up a book I read, I don't know how many times. It was called Joy. If I can find it, I'll link it at the bottom. But it was about this mother and some of the things she struggled with. And it was a lighthearted book. It was funny, but also very uplifting. And so I had to find light but uplifting things to kind of keep my mind distracted from these negative thoughts. And we have to kind of consciously make a decision to do that, right? To go to the healthier things, the things that are going to divert our thoughts. Because even though these feelings feel very real right now, we feel like I've got to fix this problem. I've got to fix what's wrong with me right now. It's just not a good time to try to fix it, because we're not thinking straight. We're not thinking clearly. So if we learn to divert our thoughts until we're in a better place, and then come back and be like, okay, what's my next baby step? Then we can get through that immediate anxiety, fear right now, and come back to it when we're able to handle it a little bit better. So let me look at your comments real quick. You can also look at different... thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate your comment. No, you're not hijacking at all. I'm glad that you have things to say. You can also look at different counseling websites. Look at pictures of counselors and pray to know the individual you feel guided to the most will be a good fit for your child. That's really thoughtful. I like that. Referrals are awesome, but sometimes we don't have that connection. Perfect. Yeah, so true. Like, there's so many ways that Heavenly Father can answer those prayers, and I know from personal experience that He will guide us to what we need in those times. So those, I guess, 4 things, right? There was when we're trying to deal with anxiety, we can realize, I'm going to kind of just summarize real quick as you're asking questions, or if you have anything else to say, that we are, this is our comfort zone. When we're here, when we're outside of our comfort zone, or when we're outside of our ability to cope with something, we feel anxiety and fear, but that's where we grow, and there's nothing wrong with that. That helps us, that indicates to us that we're having some growing and learning experiences, and that we can learn to expand the circle so that it becomes a part of our comfort zone, and we can increase our abilities and our capacities, and feel joy again wherever circumstances we're at, whatever this is for us right now. We can overcome it and grow into it. And we do that by strengthening 3 areas of our life. One is our thoughts, and we can help our children with their thoughts by listening to them and helping them sort out their own ideas, and making a safe place where they won't feel judged or they won't feel like they need to be fixed, but a safe place for them to know that we trust them to work this out, that this is between them and God, and we can lead them to feel His love by the love we feel for them and for Him, but that we can't fix the problem for them, that this is their path to take, and that we're here for them and to support them in any way we can. And then also by taking good care of our bodies, our physical bodies make a big impact on our emotions. And so baby step by baby step, we don't have to be perfect at every health thing out there right now, but what's the next little thing that we can do to take care of our bodies, to treat them with more respect, and to help them start to function, get hormonally balanced, and all the things they need in order to be able to feel the feelings the peace that we need to feel. And then the third one was to take care of our spirits, and that's a long-term solution. It's not like a quick fix, but it's going to take effort and time, and eventually our spirits will grow and be able to, that circle will expand, and we'll be able to feel. And sometimes I should say, sometimes that peace does come right away, and it's an incredible miracle, and it's a very good thing to try to seek. When we're very sincere, when we reach to God, like a drowning man reaches to God when they're drowning, I think that peace often comes, but it's not going to stay forever, right? We'll still have to deal with these challenges and these changes. And so we have to be willing to put in that work of everyday prayer, and every day reaching out to Him, and every day trying to grow closer to Him, and learning our next step and trying to do it. He loves us so much, He's not going to give us more than we're capable of doing. So if we ask Him for our next baby step, we can do that one little thing and see where it takes us. And then the fourth thing I mentioned was just that practice mentality of practicing these things, learning our baby steps, and then and learning coping strategies to help us that we can practice now, in even the little things, that we don't turn to other places for comfort, but we turn to the source of comfort, to God, when we are experiencing even more minor anxiety or more minor feelings we don't like. And so I think those 4 things are probably, at least that's the thoughts I had. Oh, and that I do want to end with a thought my daughter mentioned. And I'll look at your comments again if you have any other questions or thoughts as I share what she said. She said that our children need to learn to turn to God and walk the path themselves with Him, but we can help them and lead them by showing Him, or we can help and lead them to Him by showing them His love and light, by keeping it in our own hearts and following that guidance of that Spirit. And so again, this is tricky, because one of the things that my daughter mentioned was that sometimes our kids do need that accountability and some of that tough love when they're going through those struggles. And so when we're saying, well, we don't want to push and we don't want to try to fix their problems, at the same time, they do need us sometimes to say, this is your goal, and how can I help you meet it? And you know, in her case, you wanted to fix this, and you said that you were going to do, eat these foods or whatever. How can I help you be able to meet that goal? And just supporting them and pushing them, I hate the word pushing because it sounds like it's going against their will. It's with their will. It's with their permission to help them. But just reminding them and saying, I'm reminding you because I love you and I want you to be able to be happy. And so anytime we're pushing against their will, they're going to be resistant. But if we're asking them permission, and sometimes my kids will say, I need someone to help me stay accountable. Will you check on me in the evenings and make sure I did this list? Or will you do this? Then we have their permission, and we can feel more free and more able to help them meet those goals and keep themselves accountable with that more tough love, I guess. We don't have to just lay back and be like, I'm hands off, this is your thing. It's like, I'm going to be there for you and support you in the way that you want. And sometimes that might mean pushing you out of your comfort zone. Is that okay? And or how else can I help you at those times when you're feeling weak? So her point of keeping that light and love in our hearts will help us know which is which. When is the right time to be a little more accountability partner way, or what's the right time to be a little more of the I'm just going to sit and listen and let you sort out your own thoughts. And there's this little balance. If we're having the Spirit in our hearts and just loving them through either wherever they're at, whether they're being willful or willing, then we'll know the direction to take and just how far they need our help. And so having that Spirit and light in our hearts invites them to want it, and invites them to seek it and to want to get out of that. Because she said, if they don't want to, there's nothing you can do. There's people that struggle with some of these eating disorders, and they're like, I don't care. I'm going to have this problem and I'm going to live with it, and I don't want anybody's help. And she says they're not going to stay there forever, because nobody wants to be trapped there forever. It doesn't feel good. You hate it. You hate how you feel. But sometimes you're just so tired of and fed up that I'm giving up today. But just know that they're not going to stay there forever, and that they will eventually want it. And as you keep loving them and nurturing them and showing them His love, they're going to desire that more, and then desire that change, and then that will help them more than trying to push them. So let's see, Cami says, I love the visual of the comfort zone. I've noticed with my son, he hates being pushed out of his comfort zone, but he eventually takes on the challenge and is getting better and better at it. Yeah, it's something we can practice and get better at. I just wonder, as a mom, when do you stop worrying about your kiddos? I thought that would be around 22, but I'm here to tell you it's not. Thanks a bunch, very helpful. And my mom will say that too. She's like, yeah, it almost gets worse when you're a grandparent, and then you start to see, how they're raising their children, and you want to help. And then there's just different things that, different challenges that come up as they're adults, and you almost feel like, well, this is even, harder because I'm not right there all the time. But, so yeah, I think it's one of those things that will be with us forever. We'll always be loving and hoping our kids make good choices and supporting them and trying to find ways and praying for them. And it's part of our stewardship, and that's okay. We can find what we can do to help them even as adults. Just because they turn the magic number 18 doesn't mean that we don't have stewardship to help them and to pray for them and to receive answers as to what we can do to support them. So yeah, that's a good point. And I love your point about that you get better at deciding to take on a challenge. We have this book in our house that my son Cohen, he's 2, but he loves that I read this book. And I'm glad that he has me read it, because it helps my other little girl who is 6, who tends to really struggle with the new change. But it's about a koala who loves to cling to his tree. And I'll link it later too. But eventually, and everyone's always trying to get him to come out and play. And he doesn't ever want to leave his tree because he's comfortable there. And all of those things that those kids are doing, they maybe look kind of fun, and he kind of wants to have an adventure, but he feels much more safe in his nice home, clinging to his tree. And he just couldn't let go. But eventually, little woodpecker comes and pecks at his tree, and the tree falls, and it just says, I can't let go, and he falls with the tree. And then he looks up and he notices all these loving faces. I love that part. All this love staring down at him with all his friends, and he suddenly feels very light and good, and he realizes that what the worst thing he feared has not come to pass, and that he's okay. And then he starts to find more and more adventures, and from then on he was can do, because he learned that trying something new makes life great. And so I think that's an important concept for our kids to start to learn, that even though getting out of our comfort zone is scary and causes us some anxiety, that's the way to come alive and to really live. So thank you. Thanks all for your comments and your perspectives and your thoughts. If you have any other ones, just go ahead and post them in the comments after this video is over, and we can keep discussing it. I appreciate your words of wisdom and the thoughts you had to share, and for being here and for being you. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope your family is affected positively for it. So thanks for being here, and I will talk to you later.